Hello everyone, and welcome to the summary of round 5 of my playthrough of Tide of Iron Little Omaha. Again, it's a playtest of a scenario I'm working on. It's on the Battle of Nijmegen in September 1944, and as you can see, well, certain things have changed if you've been following the previous videos on this topic. The Americans have actually made it to the shoreline of the Vaal River, which means that they'll be able to board their canvas boats and try to make the crossing. It actually looks pretty open here, so they could actually go, well, I wouldn't call it entirely open, but I mean, they could just go straight for this one. Maybe they should split up, but then they certainly won't make it across. But so I will probably have to make some changes here in the scenario, because it does really look like they could just, go straight for the objectives here and not actually cross. I may also have to prolong the game to 12 turns rather than the 10 turns that they currently are, but let's just wait and see how it turns out. For the sake of playtesting the riverboat, the boat crossing, the river crossing, I will actually do that and see how those mechanics work, and I will do that on the next turn, which I will play entirely again. So it will be an entire playthrough of that turn, so you can see how that crossing actually unfolds. And then I will do another playtest afterwards when this one has been completed, and I will just try to forgo the river crossing and see what happens if I just go straight for the objectives, which again certainly is an option, which is of course what they intended historically too. And one of them, I mean, they might have seized the railroad bridge, I don't know, but they needed both. And yeah, as you can see here, and that is actually playing out pretty historically, they're basically, the Allies are running into a wall here. This one they could potentially breach, but it's actually been very costly. The British and the Americans have played a couple of hardened veterans cards, because of which they've actually retrieved four figures total, I believe. Yeah, 2 for the British, 2 for the Americans. They actually suffered many more casualties already. They tried to pin the MG, but that didn't happen. Note that it's on a hill, so its range against infantry is actually 6, because they have the height advantage, and they actually hit many units. They actually could have moved a little bit further this way, but I actually wanted to get along with the river crossing on the next turn, so I might have played a bit more conservatively otherwise, or tried to move some of the units a little bit further over here, in which case they would have taken, some of them would have taken another turn to get there, because in order to embark on the boats, they actually have to be on a bank hex, which are the ones obviously bordering river hexes. The MG even hit the Sherman here and damaged it lightly, because they have a range of, normally a range of 3 against vehicles. Now it's 4, so it was long range, but they actually did manage to get a few hits in. The Americans, the double mortar over here, actually managed to pin and or disrupt some of these units, but because of the officer being present in this hex, all of those were removed, and they couldn't really follow up that attack because they would have to enter all these barbed wire hexes, which, would have made fire and move impossible. Assaulting against these units, which were at the time still fresh and had not been pinned or disrupted whatsoever, that would have been pure suicide as well. So again, the way it's playing out over here is actually, because again, very historical, because again, they need to capture all 4 objectives. And as I said, the only thing I'm wondering about at this stage is whether it's actually not doable to capture at least these 2 by a direct assault and not a river assault. But we'll see about that after a couple of more playtests. Of course, the Germans could have moved a few more units from here to here. These 2, most of the game, they're not doing much. At least they haven't been doing much so far. Of course, they will come in handy for this river crossing, firing long range at units on the river, at which time they're practically defenseless and cannot fire in the first place. We'll also go over the river assault rules, the river crossing rules for you before I actually play the next turn, so you can see how those work out. The Germans also have a ton of artillery cards that they're actually saving, because they could do some damage now, but they actually want to save them all up for the time that they really need them to get some allies off of the objectives or prevent them from reaching a few of them in the first place. Just holding on to one of them is enough to win, because the allies again need to capture all 4 of them. Apart from the Hardened Veterans card, the British also bought a Sherman Firefly. I actually used an Axis and Allies Miniatures version 1 model for that. It's the same. It's got the same stats as a regular Sherman, but its range against vehicles is 8 and its firepower is 12. You can also use a regular Sherman and place for instance, national control marker next to it, or a victory medal or something like that, to remind you it's a Sherman Firefly. But I actually thought it would be nice to use an actual model. Of course, the scale is a bit off, as far as I know. The main difference between the two was simply the size of the gun on it. They changed the turret a bit too. Don't think it was actually so much bigger. But okay, some of the scales are a bit off anyway in Tide of Iron, and it doesn't really bother me too much. I just thought an actual model looked nicer. Well, that basically sums up turn or round 5, and afterwards we'll move over to turn 6, and which again I will record fully so you can see how the river crossing works. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.